The Big East is back. That's right. West Virginia and Cincinnati are going to get together for what seems like nostalgia on Saturday, but there's really some underlying currents in this game. Namely, could this be Neal's last game?
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in, guys. My name is Mountaineer Paul, your host. You're here again at Locked On West Virginia. I want to thank you guys for joining me as we talk about FanDuel, guys. You can get started with the big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and they'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. But that's only if you win your first $5 bet. Get started at FanDuel.com. And thank you for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen every single day, and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your team every single day. And today is a special one because, look, we are so glad that we don't have to travel far for away games when it comes to Cincinnati, UCF, and others. And this is one of those weeks. An old rivalry. I consider this a borderline rivalry game. I'll be interested to see if our guest feels the same way. Hudson Klauke. What's up, my dude?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on. I do. This is a little old school rivalry. Full disclosure, both of my sisters actually went to West Virginia, so it's even an inner house rivalry. But a little love in my heart for Morgantown. But yeah, man, I love playing West Virginia. It's always a fun game. Love the fans, and I especially like playing at Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati.
What year did Tony Pike play for the Bearcats? Was that 08?
It was around there, man. Yeah, it's been a while. That was
broke
back
my
when,
heart.
Yeah,
he Brian Kelly, or was it Butch that coached him? Was it Brian Kelly or Butch? It was Brian Kelly, wasn't it?
It was Brian Kelly, at least, because he was on that team that went to we played Florida in what was it, like the Sugar Bowl, and got throttled, and that was when Brian Kelly had just left the program and didn't coach that bowl game. So there might have been some crossover, but I believe that was his last year with Brian Kelly.
Yeah, the West Virginia lost a game in overtime where they went for it on the goal line. Tony Pike threw the game-winning touchdown. Tony Pike lives in my nightmares. So
I see him every now and again. I'll have to tell him that still haunts you.
Yeah, it's still haunting him. Tell him the Locked On West Virginia host is haunted. My fan shattered into 1,000 pieces when that happened. Like I was mad. I was big.
Understandable.
Mad. But back then we lived and died with every loss because it was the BCS. You could one loss could ruin your season, and West Virginia was in the Big East, so we couldn't afford any. We thought we back then we legitimately had a chance to think about those prospects back then. Not so much now. Neal Brown is in year 6, and it's just not gone to plan. I don't know how else to say it. He's on and off the hot seat. He figures out ways to coach himself off, like last year with the 9-win season. Blew you guys. Well, I don't want to say blew you guys out, but definitely put you guys to bed early in that game last year. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. You guys are a good football team. You're an explosive football team. Satterfield, man, say what you will about him, but that Louisville team was really good as soon as he left, and those were his players, and he's got some players on the Cincinnati team that can be feared.
Oh, yeah, and this is just a huge game for Neal Brown especially. Satterfield has kind of righted the ship. Like you mentioned, we got absolutely slaughtered by almost everyone last year. So it's going to be a big game, and we're both 3-2 in the Big 12 standings. So this has a lot of weight there, but you're right, man. Satterfield, from a player perspective, I think has done a great job. As you mentioned, Louisville immediately became great the second he left, which I didn't know was a great sign, but shows that he can get players. And then he did a great job snagging some talent in the portal. So, I mean, I've liked what I've seen so far. We were finished to pick to finish damn near last in the Big 12, and it doesn't seem to be the case. So far, so good. I give Satterfield like a B-.
So, yeah, and that's what this first topic is really about. Both these teams are technically still in the Big 12 race. And I haven't looked at Cincinnati's schedule the rest of the way out. Maybe you have that or know that off the top of your head. But West Virginia, compared to what – now, look, if I'm going to give Neal Brown a break somewhere, it's that he's probably played the toughest schedule in the league for a few years now. anytime you start your non-conference is Pitt and Penn State, you probably played a tougher schedule than everybody else. Those guys are 14 and 2 between them. So it's like, obviously our record could probably be better if we played some cupcakes in the early on. Maybe we are 2 wins better than we are, but we're still going to have those 2 Big 12 losses, in my opinion. It's been a wild season for West Virginia because they've beaten really bad teams and they've lost to elite teams. It's Kansas State, it's Iowa State, and it's Pitt, and it's Penn State. I think you can make a valid argument that we really don't know who this West Virginia team is yet, and we're going to find out over these last 4 games. What say you about Cincinnati?
Yeah, well, we're kind of in the opposite boat. So we did lose a nail biter. I mean, we just crumbled against Pittsburgh. We were up 3 possessions. Yeah, right. So I remember that. I was following that game as well.
Back-to-back weeks.
Yeah. So in Pittsburgh, they're a good team. They turned out to be much better than I actually anticipated.
Man.
Yeah, Eli Holstein. God, all the Pittsburgh people were in our chat just giving us hell for that. But we got.
Stand him.
Oh no, he's the worst. Solid. He's a solid quarterback though. But we got coming up. We got West Virginia Saturday, which is absolutely no cakewalk. And then we got at Iowa State, at Kansas State, and TCU to wrap up the season.
God.
So
are you going to be bowl eligible?
Yeah, right. That's really things could turn quickly, which is why this game Saturday is huge for both of us, but even more so for us because I mean, at Iowa State, at Kansas State, I mean, we got a top-heavy back end of the schedule, so things could get ugly quickly.
Brendan Sorsby has quietly been one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's really put it together. A lot of big shot plays. You guys are averaging right around 7 yards a play. What do you attribute that to? Almost 438 yards a game. Corey Kiner, obviously an incredible running back in the backfield. Pretty good offense overall. If you had to tell me what you guys do best at this point in the season, what do you think it is?
It's tough to. I just think it's tough to pinpoint exactly one thing because they do have a balanced attack with Corey Kiner running, and Sorsby has just been so good. He had kind of a dud against Colorado, but outside of that, he's played. And the thing was at Indiana, he was good too when he got an opportunity. Then he got injured and lost that job, but he was good at Indiana. So I think Sorsby. If we didn't have Sorsby, I think we could be looking at another rough year like we had last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I attribute it to it's definitely the offensive side of the ball, but the weapons that we've been able to pluck out of the portal, which would be Joe Royer, the tight end, who has been kind of a safety blanket for Sorsby. Xavier Henderson as our best wideout. He's been great. And Corey Kiner. So when you have that many weapons and you have a quarterback that is competent, and like you said, he's sneakily one of the best. I mean, he's up there with everybody besides Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, as far as the quarterback position. So you got to give a lot of credit to Sorsby and what this staff was able to do in the portal.
No doubt about that. And I'll tell you what, this is an interesting quarterback matchup because if Garrett Green were healthy, it would be very interesting. I think, unfortunately, Garrett just hasn't been able to put his best foot forward this year. I have some people that have told me that he was concussed in camp before the year even started, and that's kind of a lot of the reason why he just hasn't had the year that he had last year, which was an amazing year. I mean, he really had a top 10 all-time running year last year. So, like, he really put one together. 13 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards for a quarterback's insane, and he just hasn't been able to do that this year. Now, one thing you have to say, that's tape. People get tape, they make adjustments. The other thing is he's 190 pounds, man. So his body hadn't held up. Enter Nico Marchiol, who we have thought's been going to be the future of this program for quite a few years now. And a lot of people want to keep Neal Brown just because he's here. And he 81% completion percentage against Arizona, absolutely crushed it. So I think, for Nico, it's going to be a huge game. See if he, see if he can go head to head with Sorsby.
Yeah, I'm a little worried. Was Garrett Green, is he officially out for this game? I know I saw a couple things doubtful, but with college athletics, it's always impossible to find out. Is he officially ruled out of this game?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I was told probably the year, but we'll see.
Right. Okay. So Nico, And to your point, we did look good against Arizona, so I think that could be another wrinkle and see what he could do. But hopefully, yeah, Sorsby's going to have to play well for us to win this game. And what I think the spread's like UC minus 4.5.
Yeah.
Myself as a betting man, just because West Virginia is going to be a tough out. Like you said, I mean, hell, they lost to Penn State and Pittsburgh, two great teams. They could be a two-loss team right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see who is who, because we're going to find out in this game. Up next on Locked On West Virginia, guys, we're going to get a little deeper into the weeds, talk about some impact players, get some keys to the game. So stick around, guys. We'll be right back. This is Locked On West Virginia. This episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you by Return On You. Hey, West Virginia fans, it's time to recognize the Return On You Player of the Week. So far this season, we pulled over $20,000 to support players on Return On You. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Return On You app, you can direct your support to athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player of your choosing. Unlike collectives, you know exactly what your support is going to give, and even receive exclusive content for your troubles, like personal videos, updates after the season, etc. The best part is it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I am supporting Nico Markiol. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Nico the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow, and your support sets up your team for success. Plus, don't miss out on Return On You's exciting giveaway. You can win 2 tickets to the game in November. Just download Return On You, create an account, and enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Return On You? Well, any contribution to an athlete's campaign gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Return On You now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Roy will underscore your return for more info. Support the players. Change the game. I am back with Hudson, man. Thank you for joining me on this episode, like I said. So, some history on this game. West Virginia 17-3 in this game. Out of the 20 games West Virginia and Cincinnati have played against one another, I didn't think it was that lopsided, honestly. I truly didn't.
You're now telling me this, and now I'm even more worried. I did not realize it was that ridiculous. I mean, basketball has got to be a tighter contest then, because I didn't recall us just getting landslided like that.
Right. Yeah. You guys ranked 20th in the country, by the way, in basketball. Good win last night. West Virginia basketball absolutely just played well last night. So it's going to be a fun game this year in basketball too. We'll probably talk then as well. But what I was going to say is, I don't know, this isn't the same Mountaineer team that went 17-3 against you guys. Like, I mean, last year was good. We won 9 games. That's great. I feel like you guys are a much better team this year. So can you tell the audience, I know you mentioned a couple guys, Sorsby, the likely suspects, give them some real impact players for Cincinnati right now that are making big impacts. Like, give me that nose tackle that you guys all, that Neal mentioned in his press conference, and some other players that are making big impacts for the Bearcats.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the defense has left a little bit to be desired in certain games, but I think that they've been super hot and cold, but they've started to right the ship. I don't know if I blame them for Travis Hunter just, absolutely destroying us. I think it would have happened to anybody they played. But, yeah, Dante Corleone, D tackle, he's a guy projected in the first couple of rounds in the draft. He has been a menace in any time that he plays. Even if he's not getting the sacks, he can get into the backfield and blow up runs like nobody I've seen in a Bearcat uniform. They have a couple other guys. They're linebacking. Jake Golday. He was a guy that we weren't really expecting much from, and he's been all over the place. I'm sure you'll see his name quite a bit. And one guy you might not be expecting, because like you said, Xavier Henderson, Joe Royer, and Corey Kiner. Obviously, Sorsby, those are kind of your main suspects. Evan Pryor, he's the backup running back. He's only got, 36 carries on the year, but he's got 5 touchdowns and a long of 65. This guy is an Ohio State transfer. he can get, if he gets even a glimpse of a hole, he is gone. He's not a power running back. He's not going to break a bunch of tackles like Corey Kiner does.
He's like a
But he's a
Tavon
guy
Austin.
exactly. He's a guy to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, Tavon Austin. He's a guy to keep an eye on. And I'm sure, the West Virginia coaching staff's very aware, but they like to get him in space. And when he does, man, he's gone.
Did you ask him what he did prior to getting to Cincinnati?
Yeah, you get the drum set out. He didn't do anything because Ohio State didn't play him at all. But we're happy to take Ohio State's leftovers, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to get that pun in there. I'm a dad, so listen, sue me for dad jokes. It says my demographic's over 50 on this show, so most of the people that watch the show are older guys. Yeah, they're your average Joe, probably drinking a beer. So, man, that's interesting. Last year I looked at the tape. Zach Frazier, man, no wonder he's had such a great start to his career in Pittsburgh, because Corleone, he had his worst game last year, and that's not going to be the case this year. I think they're going to have to dedicate 2 guys to Corleone. He is an absolute stud. Had he gone up against anybody but Zach Frazier, who through the first 4 games of the NFL graded, he had a 90 pass block and a 90 run blocking game this year at Pittsburgh as a rookie. You just don't see those kind of numbers, because I had seen on some message boards, people were saying, well, Corleone didn't do anything last year. That's because he went up against a generational center. And I'm sure he probably did some. I didn't watch every snap. I'm not saying he didn't do anything, but Zach Frazier had a big reason to do with why he was taken out of that game some. That's not going to happen this year. We don't have a guy at center that can just take impact players out of the game. And Corleone is certainly, which is why Neal Brown mentioned him in his press conference. And Brandon Yates is going to have his job work cut out for him. That dude takes up 2 gaps. He really does.
Oh, yeah. You're going to want to certainly advise against maybe putting 2 guys on Corleone, because the amount of times, and it's rare that he's not winning matchups. And you just mentioned the Frazier, who's a generational talent, so that kind of explains that. But even when he's not necessarily, like I said, getting those tackles or sacks, he blows up the backfield pretty quickly. And from what you said with Nico, he might, as far as scrambling, might be a big part of this game, of him kind of moving out of the pocket and improvising a little bit. But Corleone's very good. Our defense, I'm not going to claim overall that it's a
good scoring
very
defense.
tenacious. Yeah, no, they've done a good job of forcing turnovers and forcing fumbles. Really, I don't know how much we can correlate that to just pure luck, but they have been great at forcing fumbles.
I think you coach it. I think teams that don't get turnovers, I think that's a coaching thing. People that say it's not, yes, there is an aspect of luck to it. Like, I think fumble recoveries is, in my opinion, the part of it that's lucky. But creating a fumble, there is an art to it, and you can teach it. And it's just similar to getting a rebound in basketball, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a coach, but it's an effort thing, right? If you've got a guy wrapped up, or if you're in a 3 or 4 man scrum and you're not ripping at that thing, you're not punching at that thing, it's a fight on every single down. If I was a coach, now that's what I would teach. Every single time we get into a scrum, you punch the ball, you rip the ball, you claw the ball. And I just think that's what I was taught. So, and which is why we just lost our defensive coordinator, obviously. And I think that's going to be a huge thing in this game. Love Coons, he coached at Cincinnati, defensive coordinator in 2016. You guys know who that is. And unfortunately, he was only there for 1 year, because anytime you're elevated to that spot, obviously you're probably not the guy they have for the future. But he's really done well. And I don't know if you have any numbers on what that 16 defense looked like.
Yeah, so 2016 pulling up, not a great year for our Bearcats, but we were giving up about 28 points a game. We've seen worse, especially with how much pass heavy stuff we've seen in college football, but not a fantastic defense. I'll say that.
And not that, then that to me, that, a situation like that, when a guy's elevated because somebody gets fired, similar to this, I don't think you can say this has any bearing on Coons as a coordinator. Obviously, these aren't really his players that he's recruited in both cases. Well, some of them are. But not usually the D coordinator has the say on almost every starter. Usually whoever's in your program, that D coordinator signed off on them coming there. So, with Jordan Leslie in this case, point I'm trying to make, I guess, is Coons has got the job. And whatever he did at Cincinnati before, I don't think, because some people were saying that they had a bad year. That's not his fault, really. He was thrown into a situation where the guy wasn't getting it done. They didn't have good players, whatever. And whether they improved or not, it's probably whoever you ask on the staff at the time. Similar to this, West Virginia's got one of the best run defenses in the Big 12. They do. They've shut down pretty much everybody they played, except Penn State to an extent. They had like 150 against us. So they played well against the run. It's the back end. We've had several 31 broken plays for huge gains this year, which is just a huge number. And we're hoping Coons fixes that, because apparently, according to what we've been told this week, West Virginia's problem on the back end, Hudson, has been getting lined up, getting the call communicated, and then everybody just needs to know where they go, right? And unfortunately, we've got a freshman middle linebacker who is probably going to be a generational talent. His dad, Jeremiah Trotter, who was an All-Pro for years and years and years. His brother was All-American at Clemson, and he's going to fit right in that role. Josiah Trotter, who just like you gave me your guy, you'll probably hear his name a lot. I think that has something to do with it. You got a freshman trying to get everybody lined up, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Rolling into that, Hudson, my question for you is, with all the information we've gone over so far, what do you think your game keys are?
I think we're going to have to, even if it doesn't work. Yeah, I'd say establish the run as best as we can. And I know you mentioned, West Virginia's been great, but it's try to establish that run. Right. And try to get Corey Kiner going. He's a bruiser back. I think that's huge. Win the turnover battle. That's the biggest cliche of all time, but
it's true in every game.
It has helped us. Yeah. Right. It has helped us win games. And for Sorsby to limit his mistakes, I know that kind of wraps into limiting the turnover battle, but he had some bad balls against Colorado that really cost us the game. So I think that's big as well.
I like those keys, man. I think, this is going to be a classic Neal Brown ball game, in my opinion. Neal Brown, he's got an incredible record when they have more first downs. And the reason for that is because his game plan in a lot of games is he loves to run the ball and chew clock. And he loves to do it. He loves it. It's his favorite thing in the world to do. And I like watching it. I'm not going to lie. I enjoy that kind of football if it's working. This year hasn't been as much. with a sophomore in his second start this year. I think it's his fourth start. Let's see. Oklahoma State, Pitt last week, and this one, I think this is fourth start. He's had 4 starts across like 3 years, from his freshman year to his redshirt freshman year to this redshirt sophomore year. And he is undefeated as a starter. So we'll see how that goes for him. 81% completion percentage. We'll take that every week. And we'll see how he grows. Obviously, our receivers aren't elite. Where we're elite, in my opinion, is the offensive line. We've got 3 NFL players on the offensive line. Obviously, the best left tackle in the Big 12, and Wyatt Milam, who hasn't allowed a sack or pressure in over 3 years. That's going to be important. But Nico's going to have to play well in this game. So my 3 keys, though, I ramble sometimes, are definitely Neal Brown ball, going to have to control the clock. I think win the clock for West Virginia is number 1. Number 2 is just play fast on defense. Just get the call in and no big plays. I think if they can limit big plays, and you guys have been a big play team at times this year, by the way, that's going to be number 2. And number 3, West Virginia is going to have to run the ball in this game to help Nico Marchiol, because, he's still going to be a young quarterback, and there's always a defensive coordinator over there that's making adjustments, and they're going to make adjustments from Arizona to this game. So if West Virginia can get also, like you said, run the ball, I think Nico is going to have a shot in this one.
Oh, yeah. And, probably the biggest thing that I couldn't take off the top of my head is we got to finish drives. We've had too many times where we can't convert on a 4th and short, and it's flipped the game completely. So finishing drives and getting the ball in the end zone is huge.
Yeah, that's a good point. Momentum, man, in games, right? And sometimes, man, momentum swings an entire game. Almost, it could go from, like, against Pitt, we had a 99% win probability. We were up 10 with 3 minutes to go. And
We're
one
the same.
drive, it just absolutely crushed it. So I think, at the end of the day, man, that's exactly right. Momentum's a big deal. Up next on Locked On West Virginia, guys, we're going to give our game score prediction. So stick around, guys. You don't want to miss that. This is Locked On West Virginia. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you in part by Zbiotics. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking, and here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. This byproduct, and not dehydration, is to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember that to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night, then drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. For best results, make sure pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, then drink responsibly is step 2. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And step 3 is enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. Use the code Locked On College at checkout for 15% off. All right, we are back in segment 3 with Hudson, man. Thank you very much for coming on, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you for the stop and start and the whole thing in between. At the end of the day, man, this is going to remind a lot of people of Big East days. I think people are going to be channeling their inner Tony Pike. Maybe not the first people that people think of, but I have nightmares about Tony Pike, Zach Collaros, name it. I have nightmares. And similarly, Cincinnati people are going to be channeling maybe their inner Pat White in fear, or Pat McAfee, or whoever, Noel Devine, Tavon Austin, you name it. That's what I think of when I think about Cincinnati and West Virginia. What say you, man?
Oh yeah, Steve Slayton, Pat White, the Tavon Austin highlight tapes at 1:30 in the morning. West Virginia's got a great history, man. So this should be a fun one.
Absolutely. So this is a game where I think at the end of the day, you've got two extremely similarly matched teams. I think we're going to find out a lot about each team because both teams have beaten up on, for the most part, teams that now you can look back and say, okay, they were probably better than them. Okay, they may not have been as good as them. In Cincinnati's case, what do you think is going to happen in tomorrow's game?
So I'm going to give a score prediction of 34-27. I got to take my Bearcats, and I got to take a cover as well. Because I know I'm probably going to end up betting this, even though I think it's going to be pretty tight. I think it'll come down to the last 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. We'll see if UC, like I had said, short yardage is going to be big. Our kicker. That's one other thing to keep in mind. We've had some Texas Tech. We lost by 3 points. Pittsburgh, we lost by 1 point. All came down to missed kicks. We've kind of swapped out kickers every other game, it seems like. So I think it's going to come down to that and just being effective and finishing drives. But I think it's going to be tight, but I got to take my Cats by a touchdown.
Do you factor any of the pressure that Neal Brown has been under? And have you seen any of the stuff that's been going on in Morgantown the last 2 weeks?
So, yeah, like I said, my sisters are, diehard Mountaineers. Right. Yeah. So so you
saw the billboards and everything, huh?
Even I haven't actually seen the billboards. They've just been telling me, and they don't follow football very closely, but they're even saying Neal Brown's got to go. So that's really the gist of what I've seen. And I know he's been there for a while. It's not Satterfield's in year 2, so it's a little bit different.
Way different.
But I think if it comes down to, and you would know more than me, if he's lost the team, then it's going to be really difficult. Yeah. So if the kids are still on board. And they're going to be fighting for Neal Brown to keep his job. I mean, that could certainly have an impact on what kind of effort we're going to see.
Yeah, I guess, in my negative head, I think of it in a negative way, but you're right. It could also be a positive thing for them, rallying around their coach. One thing, something people don't say about Neal Brown is that he's an ass. They don't say he's somebody you don't like, That's literally the only criticism he gets is what's happened on the field. Everything else he knocks completely out of the park. And I'm being 100% real. Like, he's as good as a program manager as you could ever possibly want, from the face of the program, from how he handles the press, from how he handles the parents and families. But on the field, he has been mediocre, middling, bad. 3-17 versus top 25 teams. Just horrible. 0-8, lost 8 in a row to top 25 teams. Just, I can go on and on. 6 years we've been. Did you ever think West Virginia would go 6 years in a row without being ranked? Because that's what's happening to Neal Brown.
I mean, it sounds like he's such a likable guy, and the players like him. The athletic director obviously likes him. That's how he's kind of stuck around with a pretty mediocre. Yeah,
it has a lot to do with it. It has a lot to do with it, and it definitely does help him. And he went 9-4 last year, and so we won a lot of people back over. That entire team came back this year, and he's 4-4. So you get where a lot of us are coming from. Yeah, you had 3 or 4, 5, 6 years. He never won more than 6 those first 4 years. And then in year 5, he finally, you're thinking, okay, well, it was COVID, and he took over after Dane, and it was so bad. And then you finally break through with the 9-4 season, and you return literally everyone but Zach Frazier, who obviously starting for the Steelers and getting all these awards. But we all expected Dallas. We really did. I mean, at least in our fan base. Leave it to us to overreact a little bit. But long story short, we're disappointed. Now, could he win 4 or 5 in a row to end the season? And if he wins 8 again, you can't fire him, I guess. If you win 9, then 8. But it's been a rough ride, Hudson. It's been a rough ride, man.
I hear you, man. Because we were in the college football playoff a couple years ago.
And that's another thing.
Win 3 games the following year. So we were, UC's got people forget, a pretty good historical tradition of churning out some winning football teams. And the picket fences were out just last year. And Fickle kind of, I think, saw the writing on the wall with the roster we were bringing in and kind of left Satterfield out to dry. So, it's kind of a clash of what you guys anticipated. We weren't expected to do much. We've actually outperformed what we thought. And you guys are kind of the opposite. But,
right.
maybe Neal Brown could turn it around. Who knows?
Never know. It's football, man. Frank Beamer, like people tell me every single day in the comments whenever I go too hard on Neal, Frank Beamer was really bad for 6 years at Virginia Tech before he turned it around. But that was in a whole other era. It's not portal anymore.
It's rare.
If you can develop players, like you used to be able to develop players over 4 years, and you can figure that formula out for yourself, even at 3-star players. You can't do that anymore. All right, Hudson. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I mean, they want that instant success with the portal. You can go in and change your roster in one season. Exactly.
That Sonny Dykes 1 year, you go to the Natty with TCU. That was the most random thing ever. And now he's won, he's lost, he's like 8 or 9 and 25 since then. It's crazy. So tell everybody where they can find you, Hudson, before we go, man. Where are you guys at? Where you do your thing at?
Yeah, so anywhere you find podcasts, Chatterbox Bearcats would be the handle there. You can find us on YouTube, Chatterbox Sports. We do we welcome all West Virginia fans to jump in after the game. We do a live. I don't know if you guys do the same. We do a live show after every game, so we'll be in the. All right, so they might be on your channel. We won't steal those guys, but find us on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and then anywhere you find podcasts is Chatterbox Bearcats.
Sounds good, man. And thank you guys for joining us for this preview, West Virginia and Cincinnati. And obviously, I'm going to give my pick real quick since I forgot about it while we were talking. I'm also going to pick Cincinnati to win this game. I'm going to go lower scoring. I think you've got a quarterback in Nico that could struggle in this game. I could be wrong. I want to be wrong. But I'm going to go Cincinnati. I'm going to go Cincinnati 30, West Virginia 21. I think Cincinnati wins this by more than a score. I want to be wrong, but there's been so much negativity in West Virginia over the last 2 weeks. It's going to be one thing or the other. It's going to spur these guys on to have a great end of the season, or maybe the opposite. I don't think there's going to be anything in between. So we'll see. I've got Cincinnati 1-2. And I'll probably get heck in the comments for it, but I'm objective. I try to be fair and objective. I hope I'm wrong. Thank you guys for joining us, man. This is Locked On West Virginia. Before you go, thanks for making us your first listen of the day. If you could, make Locked On Big 12 your last listen for the day or any listen with Drake Toll. He leads the conversation on conference realignment news and pulls no punches when it comes to covering every team in the Big 12. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you go to Chatterbox, guys. Check those boys out, man. They do an excellent job. I was vetting them before we had them on the show, and they're really good. They're really professional what they do. They like to joke around a little bit. I like that. So for Hudson, for Paul, we are out, and thank you guys.